was wonderful and very, you know, proficient. But I do think he was great. He was not Adam, though. And I think a lot of people talk about the play now, and they associate this sort of magical quality to it, this sort of intangible, magical thing. And I really believe that that is Adam. That is what he brings, because as a human being, he sort of is magical, and he brings that, it's true, he brings that to the show, and it's something that couldn't be written. I don't think Rick could have, you know, when you say, you know, this character is sort of magical, it's like, what does that even mean? But the play totally changed when Adam came on board.
Well, this is an example of what it feels like to be in a room with, I mean, the generosity that sort of overflows from all of us. We're all a little bit in love with each other in a really lovely way, and we like to talk about it. So I'm so honored to be up here with you.
So Christian,
yep.
Even though I've sort of been in the corner of this thing, watching you guys do this for 5 years now, I would, if you have a minute at some point, because Rick mentioned it, I would love to hear about how Stash did develop. Because, you know, he's one way in the book, and you guys have transformed him into this just larger-than-life amazing character. And at the same time, you came into the Broadway production when we were off-Broadway. I use that term, that pronoun very, very liberally. When you guys were off-Broadway, you had that 10-day period where you had to leave to shoot a pilot of a little show called Smash that went on to be a smash. And as you guys were coming into the possibility of a Broadway run, I know that role was up and none of us knew what was going to happen, and I was texting Rick every day saying, what's going to happen now? And then you very graciously and generously figured a way to play this role. And I wondered how it is when you face something like that, TV and all these things, that you balance, just as an actor, you balance that thing of things that you love to do versus things that put food on the table. And that kind of decision-making that you go through, but especially that evolution of Stash.
There was a small window of time where I didn't think I was going to be able to do Starcatcher on Broadway. And when everything lined up, it was when they got the Brooks Atkinson. And the timing kind of shifted a little bit, and the clouds parted, and when I realized that I was going to be able to do it, it was one of the happiest days of my life. Because this project has been the great joy of my life. To be asked, you know, what's...
It was January 20th. Not that I would remember it, because it was a happy day for us, too. It was January 20th, and my sister-in-law remembers when we were down in Florida when we got the word. And that's why I remember the day. It was a good day, January 20th, inauguration day, but this year.
It's amazing to be asked what it's like to juggle something as fancy as Smash and something as joyous as Peter and the Starcatcher. Smash has been great and a fantastic adventure, and working for TV is just, it's surreal and bizarre and big and kind of just the sheer number of people who see it. You know, that has changed a lot in my life, because you're piped into people's living rooms. It's very bizarre and very fun. But it can't compete with the family feeling of the theater and the ritual and the kind of the trust that you have of doing the same thing 8 times a week and seeing each other go through things together and being there for each other. That is majorly different, and that's the joy of theater. Stash, when we started out in La Jolla working on, well, it was really started when I sat in Tom Schumacher's office at the Disney offices on 42nd Street.
Gorgeous offices.
Yeah, it's got the original proscenium from the Follies. It's amazing. I sat in there with Roger and Rick and Tom, and I read a monologue about a teapot, and it was this kind of the seed of what Black Stash would become. It really was planted in that room, I suppose, and everything kind of, we were all liking each other and thinking that this would be a fun thing for all of us to do, and I was very excited to be cast. And then when we got out to this beautiful place, La Jolla, California, it was sunny, and where we were rehearsing and performing, there was a deck looking out over this valley, and it was just gorgeous, and we were all having a grand, it felt like camp. And
there were bunnies.
There were bunnies. And I remember at one point, you know, I had that annoying actor thing where I was working on a bit, and Rick was out there on his phone, kind of texting somebody, and we were on a break, and I kind of walked up to him, and I was like, "Do you think I could maybe, if at that moment, if I could say maybe this or like something like that, maybe something like that." And it's been years of me kind of going up to Rick and saying, "You think that maybe? I mean, this is great. This is great." Just something like, and he will always come back with something that is 100,000 times better than anything that I could ever even come up with.
Shrewd of me, isn't it, to do it that way? Too late to be big.
Specifically talking about Stash, Roger and Alex and Rick all wanted Stash to have an element of danger and to be really kind of this pathetic lost man. And as an actor, the great trap is to kind of get so carried away with the excitement of performing and getting people to laugh that sometimes you forget to rein yourself in, and that's what emails from Roger are for. But whenever I go back to the foundation of the fact that Stash is actually dangerous and could actually cut somebody's throat because he is so sad and lost, you kind of can't go wrong. And it really is the moment where he sees Peter as the hero in his life, that he becomes the person who will obviously become Captain Hook.
Can I tell you one thing? That you know, it's exciting when you get in a room with actors who are, you know, really inventive and really talented, and there's not the kind of pressure that rides on the people at the table when you're doing a show straight on Broadway and you feel like there's millions of dollars of, you know, riding on every decision that you make, and in La Jolla it wasn't like that, and so the growth of the play and the enjoyment that we had with each other was in part enhanced by the absence of that kind of economic pressure. But I think the whole thing that happened specifically with Stash can be summed up with one. Hi, Kath. Can be specifically summed up in this one thing that happened in July of 2010. This was a week that we set aside to do the new script that was going to be done at New York Theater Workshop. And it was the first time that Adam was with the company. It's what they call a 29-hour week, because Actors Equity just couldn't spring for that 30th hour. You know, they just said no to 30 hours, but they'll give you 29 hours. You get to work on your play for 29 hours and not a minute more. And it's spread out from Monday through Friday, and the last 3 hours of the 29 hours is you read it to the people who are going to put the show on so that they understand what the heck it is, right? And so it's really a 26-hour work period. And everyone was familiarizing themselves with the play. And then in the last 3 hours, the room filled up like this, and the actors all stood in front of music stands, and they read the play. They don't perform the play, they read it. But it becomes sort of like a performance of sorts, because they're characterizing the characters. And there was a moment towards the end of the play when there was a new bit between Stash and Smee, his comedy sidekick, you know, one of the famous Peter Pan characters that exists in Peter and the Starcatcher, and Peter and the Starcatchers, by his name that was invented by James Barrie in 1904. And in this particular case, Stash said something, and Smee said something, and Christian did his next line, which was a cynical line. And he said, "Did you see that? Did you see that, Smee? Genuine heroic sacrifice." That was what I typed. Did you see that? Genuine heroic sacrifice. Me thinking that Stash would be snarky about it. And Christian, without, you know, just after 20 hours, in a room full of people like this, you know, no lights or anything, no illusion, everything's like totally real and out there. And he read that line in a different way. And I was sitting in the back with my script, and I was making notes and drawing things and looking for Celia's eyes, and I circled that, and I thought, that that's the character, right there. It was a completely new idea that I heard because of the way he said 3 lines. Actually, the way he went like that before the 3 lines. And I didn't say anything to him, and he didn't say anything to me.
And this is what this whole thing is all about. I remember that so specifically, and what it wasn't because I had somehow brilliantly realized that that's what this was. It was because of Adam. And this new thing that Adam was as this boy. And in the moment, in the room, he did something so astonishingly truthful, because he can only be truthful, that it didn't make sense to do it any other way. What he did was so obviously lovely that I didn't mean to make that choice. It just happened because of what he did. And I remember being really excited by it, because it's those moments of alchemy in the theater. And I called Rick the next day. And he picked up the phone. I was like, hey, I have to talk to you about something. And he just went, I know. And I was like, no, I want to talk to you about a moment. He's like, I got it. Don't say anything else.
I was actually in front of the computer rewriting the scene.
Like, don't say anything else. I was like, but you know what's the thing? He's like, I know. Go away. And that really did become the seed of the grand, huge, it became Stash's whole, to use Adam's term, juicy arc. Which I never wanted to say. But it became that moment that Stash realizes that he is nothing without the hero, and that it's ecstasy almost to finally know who he is, thanks to this boy.